All right, so welcome everyone. We just completed our annual general meeting and now we are opening it up for our keynote speaker. So I'm very, very happy to welcome you tonight. Again, if you're just joining us, I'm Robin Kingsborough, president of the CRSC. And I'm very happy to introduce now our keynote speaker, Udo Schliemann, who is Principal Creative Director at Entro Communications in Toronto. This is a leading studio for branding, wayfinding, and experiential design. And Udo is going to delve into the profound relationships between color and cultural centers, public buildings, and workplaces. I heard a talk by Udo last summer at Color Impact Conference in Rochester, and I was just really blown away by all the wonderful, great work he's done. And really was excited to invite him and have him share his work with you tonight. So he has a 42-year career as a graphic designer, and he leads a dynamic team at Entro Communications in Toronto. Originally from Germany, Udo ventured to Toronto in 1999, contributing significantly to Gottschalk and Ash. In 2011, he's post-chairing the SEGD International Design Conference in Montreal, and then assumed the role of Principal Creative Director at Entro. Udo's expertise shines in integrated signage and placemaking programs for cultural institutions, notably the National Arts Centre in Ottawa, the AGO's Weston Family Learning Center, the ROM, and currently the Perelman Center of Performing Arts in New York. His work, adorned with accolades such as the Red Dot Award, SEGD Awards, Applied Arts, and Grand Prix de Design Awards, reflects a fusion of functional design and artistic brilliance. Trained and mentored by the esteemed designer and artist Anton Stankowski in Germany, Udo seamlessly integrates artistic elements into his designs, elevating each program beyond pure functionality. In 2017, he earned a well-deserved spot as member of the Distinguished Royal Canadian Academy of Arts. His journey is a testament to his unwavering commitment to pushing the boundaries of design, creating impactful and visual stunning experiences. Udo, I'm so happy that you are joining us tonight. I'm very much looking forward to your talk, so please take it away.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the trust you have in me for this talk. That's a wonderful feeling. So, I'm a little bit nervous because my brother in Germany, who's a scientist, is joining and must be in the middle of the night there. So he will be very critical about everything I say here. Hi. So I'm, as Robin said, I'm a practitioner with over 40 years, but despite that long time in my career and dealing with colors, it feels like I'm starting anew every day in learning more about color. And when I can, I join the talks by the Color Society. They are always enlightening. They are so diverse, from scientific contribution to artistic contribution. It's just wonderful, and I learned so much already. So my talk is about color as a strategic tool in the built environment. So our work is mostly for the built environment in form of wayfinding programs, placemaking, and experiential graphics. And color is a ingredient that we use very purposefully and in a bold way. And this little title slide already shows how differentiated and how complicated color is. For example, the upper field, the blue gradient, when you have a line in between, the gradient typically falls into a darker and a lighter tone. It's a phenomena. Or if you read the subline and see the color and the color in which my name on the bottom is written, but on a different background, it's the same color, but it appears completely in a different hue. And what you think on the bottom is black, depending on your screen, is actually not black. Here you have a real black, or at least by the numbers, it's a real black. And so you see how complicated and how difficult it is to work with color, and you have to think about so many different aspects of color. In other words, ce n'est pas une pipe, what Magritte said about his paintings, because it's just a representation of a pipe to smoke. In similar way, it's color. Color is not necessarily what you see, is what you get. There are so many factors that influence color, and we should be always aware of that. So at Entro, our work is really connecting people to place through the use of color, besides other things like typography. It gives places identity, meaning, and an emotional connection. The emotional connection, that's the key part in using color. We create designs that are practical and beautiful. That's also an important part. So we don't use, for example, color in order to enhance activity or make people work longer or better, faster. No, our primary goal is to make it beautiful, especially in our technological world, and make everyday experiences inspirational, poetic, beautiful. And one example, and I go through a couple of examples, is the Pan Am Aquatic Center that was specifically built for the Pan Am Games a couple of years ago. And our contribution was to do the wayfinding program. Typically, clients never ask us to do something like this backdrop here, but we thought if we invite the world to these games, then there should be something different than just a normal pool with a tiled backdrop. And here it's just like a oversized glass Oldenburg in 2D, water patterns in an abstract rendition, all in blue tones. So it's not too disturbing for the divers and for the swimmers, but it adds a bit of animation and excitement to the place. The neglected child of architecture are often parking garages. And here at the Enbridge Center, we said, why don't we make the cars the hero again, especially the love relationship of the 50s in North America, the love relationship to the cars, and bring them in a bold way on these parking spots in that parking garage, and each level has a different color tone as a wayfinding tool. But it's just wonderful to see these cars, and we heard from customers that they always try to park at their most loved car. So it's really successful, and it brightens up the normally dull parking garages, mostly through the use of color and these iconic cars. Student residences, another project. Of course, student life should be vigorous, engaging, should be fun and exciting. And so here we used color extensively to create an atmosphere for these student residences. Here you see it in the canopy, and on the inside it continues with these bold patterns, just to bring more life to the student residences, which is quite different from the experience that I had when I lived in a student residence. which was more like a prison than what we have nowadays. So huge progress. And then the different levels have different iconic graphics and oversized numbers, all to help to make it homey, make it interesting, and appropriate for student living. Oh, sorry. Another one is Parkside, which is also a student residence, this time in Toronto. The other one was in Montreal. And here we did also the identity. It's like a fingerprint, if you want. It's also the focus in the center. And then if you use the dot as a tool, then you have the graphics of the level numbers in large dots, for example. And you play with the identity, with the logo in large scale, which works together with these oversized lamps that the architects and interior designers put into the lobby. Here you see another floor, and it's just interesting to see. It adds pleasure, it adds interest, it adds fun to the student residence. Now, we often use color as a wayfinding tool for have different floor denominations and to identify different floors. At Deloitte in Toronto, we did this really purposefully because each floor has different units and different groups working there. But then we used these colors for each floor, different tones, but then we used them also inside the layout. For example, wall graphics here, that's the green floor, have then green elements embedded into the graphics and photographs. The little ottoman on the bottom right is also colored in green. So immediately you feel that everything works together. One floor is the Deloitte University, and it's a square layout. And to help with the differentiation of the various classrooms, we have different themes applied for the glass manifestations. In this case, it's the northern side of these classrooms, and it's an abstraction of the northern lights. It's very often that in Canada we use the northern lights as an image, but we didn't want it to use it so directly. Everything that is easily understandable and easily comprehensible is also easily forgotten, or it's not as inspiring. It is much more inspiring when the eyes and your brain have to work a little bit on an image to decode it and to find a solution. And therefore, the abstraction here in this vague, cloudy image, but the green, blue, and yellow tones lead you to thinking this could be an image of the borealis in itself. On the east side, we have like a dreamscape of a creek. And once again, this creek is not just one image, it's actually composed out of 3 images. So again, it's an imaginative, maybe a little bit poetic way of saying, creeks are very typical on the east side. We have a lot of water here, and so it creates something that lasts longer as if it would be just one image. The fact that we put these vinyls behind glass enhances the brilliance of the photography, which is very important as an opposite to this charred dark wood on the outside of that corridor. So it brings life and brings brightness to this corridor. And then on the west side, a completely different theme. These are basically abstract representation of prairie grasses. So to the west in the prairies, we have these tall grasses. And here, this is used as a distraction film on the glass. Another example is an exhibition about the Incas, the treasure of Peru, at Pointe Callière in Montreal. And the Incas used especially red as the key color for their culture and for their textiles. And so my colleague who worked on this specifically thought of having a red thread that guides through the whole exhibition. And here the red thread is kind of rendered in form of tree trunks on which these birds sit. But if the birds would just sit on these little pedestals, it would not be as striking as it is here, where the pedestals are made out of colored plexiglass, and together with the colored shadow that they throw on the wall, it creates this wonderful backdrop, almost more colorful than the birds themselves, in this exhibition place. And then at the end of the exhibition, when you went through all the different displays and exhibits, you have this digital screen, which is like you can weave your own patterns. You have these little square pattern, you align them in that one line, and then you slide that ruler and or the shuttle, and these images will appear on the screen. So with each row, this screen adds another row of patterns. So you create your own patterns, and then these patterns are continued on the walls in the screen. So it's a lovely idea, and the kids especially love to do it, creating their own patterns and weave their own patterns together. So why color? So how did I got involved with color? What was my interest in colors, and how did it all started? And this is an interesting story. Maybe I jump over this. The story start basically with my first job after I studied graphic design, and that was with Anton Stankowski. Here on the left, I was the young apprentice. In this photo, we went to a presentation in Berchtesgaden in the Alps because we won the competition for the Olympic bid for Berchtesgaden to do the Winter Olympics. And when we arrived, a snowstorm happened. And so that's how we traveled at the time. So also quite different than nowadays, was more an adventure. But Anton Stankowski was a marvelous person and a genius. He was a painter, and you see here two of his paintings on the right, constructivist paintings. A painter. He was a really revered graphic designer, especially his notion of visualization of things you cannot see and you cannot photograph was his contribution to graphic design. One of his major works was the identity for the Deutsche Bank, the biggest bank in Germany. And just so rich and so varied in his executions, which probably came from, as he says, from his apprentices as a church painter. So he painted out the walls in churches and the frescoes and leaf patterns and saints and all that, and that created a very rich vocabulary. And thirdly, he was also a really talented photographer. And not only for photography as art, but photography in the 1920s, when he started out, there was no stock photography. He had to photograph his material that he then used in advertising himself. And so here, for example, in the left, in this advertisement, that's himself in the photo. And on the right, the woman, that's his wife. So everybody had to work to get the material that he can then use in advertising, because nothing existed. You couldn't just buy images as you do nowadays, or you press on a button or Google search for an image. It didn't exist. You had to do it yourself. And after a while, after a couple of years, Anton Stankowski asked me if I want to paint for him. And you see me on the left here in my younger years with a painting by Anton Stankowski, which I painted out and painstakingly with all the different colors. But I fell in love with painting and with colors. And you see on the right the image that you also see behind me. It's a direct lineage, you can say, from Stankowski to me. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, you could say. But it's wonderful to paint and to work with color. It's almost like therapy. And I keep going ever since, and mixing the colors, mostly acrylic, in these little film cans. And yeah, that's what I do. But then also, and that's also similar to Stankowski, there was the art itself, and then there was the applied art or the graphic design, and each side influenced the others. We don't see a difference between art and design. For us, it all belongs together as long as it is good. And for example, on the right end, and I hope you don't see the images of the people you see the slide, I hope so, because in my case, it's covered by all the people that are joining. So on the right side, you see a pylon, identification pylon for Casey House, which is the HIV hospice for victims of HIV/AIDS. And this is not a typical pylon as you see in other hospitals that look very bureaucratic and very, institutional. This is all about the passion that the staff have for their patients. And it's also a reference to the kilt, because in San Francisco, the kilt movement for HIV/AIDS patients started in San Francisco, and the architect references in the building by using different cladding materials, different stones and bricks, and creates a kilt through materials. And we created a quilt just through the color patterns, all in red tones. And when you drive by on Jarvis Street, you see this beacon of light, of passion from the distance. And then you apply it also in with a little card where, because their logo is that heart, and the heart is kind of hidden in that pattern as well. So it's always the combination of applied art and art itself, and each one influences itself. Here you see another application for a tech company where it's all about data and fluidity and these kind of things. Another art piece where I'm concerned about the polarized worlds. And then I could also use it for a contribution in a journal about Mandela in South Africa, because Mandela was really combining the two worlds that were apart during the apartheid. And so this graphic shows that he is kind of this border crossers who can combine two worlds. And so I do a lot of these graphic pieces. I almost feel they are like finger exercises. So you stay, you explore, you find, you try something, and always be investigative, try to find new combinations, new ways of putting things together. And then maybe one or the other is able to be worked into a commercial application. And you will see that later on in examples. So color and experience, a couple of things, because I have this mind, I'm always open to investigate things and to explore things. And it's so important for our work that we do. And as you might know, color is about emotion, how color makes us feel. It's about cognition, how color makes us see the world, and behavior, how color, stimulates us to do certain things or behave in a certain way. So these three factors are very important in our work. And, we mentioned Mr. Seymour already in one of his last talks he gave, where he really elaborated on the singularity of giving red a certain color and see it in isolation. But a color is never seen in isolation, and these cheap psychology when you Google it, you get these simple answers what a color is supposed to be. But in real life, it is much more differentiated, and color can appear in so many different ways. And it's never just one tone, and it never appears by itself. And then also, if color is combined with an image or with an object, is that really the color of blood and fear? I don't think so. It's really the context is so important when we use color. And Miss Dice, an artist, has this work in progress where she really wants to counter the idea that, we have this stigma of the black person, the yellow person, the red person, the white person. It doesn't really exist. So she took basically from a small area of pixels from the nose, which created then the Pantone color, which is then used in the background. And she just emphasizes in her work how different we are as human beings and how individual we are. And there is not this categorization and stigma of you are a white person or you are a black person. The world life is much more varied. And I think with our work, we really try to do that, or to emphasize that our life is much more varied and much more interesting than stereotypical images. Kapwani is an artist, a Canadian artist, international renowned artist, and one of her works is about the exploration of this line in buildings below, and it's 1 meter and 60 high, or 5 foot high. Below, it's painted in one color, mostly in a gloss finish, so it can be wiped down, and above it's a different color. And this came from a conference in the early 1900s in I think Switzerland it was, where a tuberculosis conference, where an architect said, we can clean rooms much easier when we paint everything up to this line, and then it can be washed down, and therefore tuberculosis cannot spread. And from this singular determination, we still have classrooms in our high schools that have exactly this addendum line with these glossy finishes towards the bottom, hospitals or mental health facilities. And it doesn't have to be like that anymore. But it's still ongoing, and it classifies, it kind of it becomes like a stigma to our world. And I find this work by Kapwani so interesting, and how she renders it in these different layouts. And we should overcome it. We don't have to do that anymore. So Pantone 448 was a couple of years ago deemed the most ugliest color that we have in the Pantone book. And if you see it like this, again, isolated, you might agree, yeah, this is really not the color I would wear. But as Albers already said, the interaction of color, it always depends, what you put together with these colors. And suddenly, if you add other colors that are complementary or that work together, now you start an interaction. Suddenly, that 448 Pantone tone suddenly works into this whole scheme. It's not that bad anymore. And again, if you bring that in context with an image like this pattern here, suddenly this is actually really great because the dark greenish or the olive green background holds all these other colors together, the pattern that is in front of it. And it also talks about, the spatiality of things, of colors. And then if you dress it, use this pattern on a dress, and then suddenly it becomes actually an interesting, beautiful dress. So it's all really relative. And in our profession, you figure out the nuances of color and what it means. And the simplified answers, what red is or what blue means or what yellow means, don't really help in our profession. You might run into a trap because circumstances or context doesn't work out as these simplified explanations give you. Culture is also very important when it comes to color. For example, in China, a wedding dress is often in red because this stands for happiness and for wealth and for all positive things. While in Western civilizations, a wedding dress is often in white because that stands for purity, the white color. So cultural context is very important. Or strangely, again, things that relate to my profession, why do we have a red exit sign and a green running man symbolizing the same things? The green running man is in Europe mostly, the exit sign here in North America. They come around now and they use the green running man as well for the very reason, first of all, not everybody can read English, and even so it's a simple word, but exit is maybe not understood with everybody. Secondly, red is symbolized with warning. So why do you have a warning sign? You should have it in like the running man in green, which means hope, and something you means go, like a traffic light. Green light means go there in case of emergency. And against the red yellow flames, maybe the exit sign isn't even that good readable at all. So again, these cultural differences, but also the differences in how we understand things. Another question we designers are concerned with is, do colors age? And yes, colors age physically, because all the photons that fall on a surface and in part get absorbed, and what we see reflected is the color we will see on an object. Is not that these photons just get eaten or get disappeared. No. So over time, these photons or these electrons dissolve or change the consistency of the molecules of the object and create new constellations. And over time, slowly, that weakens the overall construct of the object. And for example, if you have an image or a painting where the varnish yellows over time. That is exactly these photons that bombard that image, slowly change the chemical and physical constellation of the painting and of the varnish. And it's the nature's way of being sustainable, basically dissolve something over time. But we are more concerned is, do we become tired of colors? And for example, after the First World War, the idea of the white box in architecture was created, and it was heavily supported because at that time, architecture magazines were mostly, all of them were printed in black and white. And the artists in the magazines, they even made the image wider than it really was in the negatives to appear really white and stark. And it was a reaction of all the carnage, all the mud, all the historism that happened before. Kind of the decadence of that era resulted in a universal and new way of thinking, and that was exemplified in new materials, steel, glass, and concrete, and the white color. And till nowadays, we still have this ideal of the white colors, but a lot has changed in the meantime. But that was the dominance of the white box, so to say, in architecture. But you always see trend colors coming in architecture. For example, orange. I think it started really in the 90s, where suddenly you saw orange accent walls in orange tones, often for buildings that for kindergartens, for example, or children museums, but also more and more in office buildings and other buildings as an accent. This architect here, Jacob and McFarlane, funny enough, they built one building, the Orange Coupe, in Lyon in France, and then a couple of years later, the Green Cube for Euronews, for a news outlet in the same city. I find this kind of hilarious, but it demonstrates the strong emphasis on color. And nowadays, even purple are used in buildings, and this would be possible a couple of years ago, I would say. So we become more sensitized, and also the architects become more open to experimenting with colors. They also realize that it's a complex undertaking architecture nowadays. It needs many sub-consultants, for example, interior designers and graphic designers, because the building is the sentiment overall, but then color and information panels communicate directly with the audience. So we will see more color implementation in architecture in the future. But back to the topic of, do colors age? So here I just picked 3 examples from the 50s, and you can clearly sense, yeah, they look kind of old. Of course, it's the colors, but it's also the style of the images. From the technical standpoint, overprinting images was easier than a precision dot by dot halftone image, and so you have a lot of these overlay images from that period. And I just tried it. So this is a graphic that we used at BMO recently for wall graphics. The image is not exactly the graphics that I show above, but it's just to give you an idea in the space. And then I applied, the colors of this 50s title page onto the graphic image. And then I did the same. So this is another installation from nowadays, also from BMO. These are like jalousies, vertical jalousies that can be turned. And then again, apply the colors of the old image. And I find that is very interesting if the color is distracted or abstracted from the actual composition of the title page, it becomes suddenly very interesting because it is a color combination that we nowadays wouldn't use in this way. And when you see it, suddenly it becomes fresh again. It's not, it doesn't feel as old as it was before. Suddenly, it's a combination that we probably haven't seen for a while in nowadays, and therefore it has a fresh take on it. So sometimes it's actually quite interesting to review colors, how they were used 10, 20, 30, in this case, maybe 70 years ago, and see how they can be applied again nowadays. So colors do age, but they age because of the repetition. You see it again and again and again until you don't see it anymore. And if you can see it fresh again, it makes a difference. In the second part of my talk, I come to show a couple of examples how we used color in buildings. The first one is Artscape Western Commons in Toronto. Artscape, together with the city and the developer, they bought this, very trist, very sad looking area. It was planned to be a grocery store in there in the right part. But it never really became a grocery store. Then it sought to be maybe a parking garage. So it didn't really work, and it was left like that, and it looked really sad. And what we did, we just brought in color. So you see the right part of the building is the same, just the lower band is now with glass, has changed to glass. But in principle, it's still the same thing, but with color and, of course, clean up the space and the plaza in front of it, suddenly it becomes so much more inviting. And because the area of Western Road and Lawrence Street is an area which used to be affluent, there was a lot of industry there, but has fallen a little bit behind. And nowadays, many immigrants from Africa, from Southern Asia live there. And color has a way of talking to people that opens them up to explore and to come in. It takes away the anxiety that this might not be for me. The color affinity, people from Africa, for example, is much stronger than we in our northern hemisphere. And that's how our cities normally look like. So we use color to attract, to signal that this is for everybody. This is a happy place. This is a place of experimentation. And that's exactly what Artscape is all about, because Artscape is about the culture, the communities, the arts, and they feel that artists bring vibrancy to a place and help to turn around a city or certain areas of a city. And then we really wrapped the building on 3 sides just with color patterns. And the high-rise behind it, which is not part of the project, but they were so intrigued about this coloring thing that they wanted to have these color patches also on one side of the brick facade. And interestingly, you might have seen from Miss Francois, who was celebrated in Montreal recently with a special exhibition. I believe it was her 90th birthday or 100th birthday. They did a wall similar like that, but a little bit better, I would say, to her birthday. And then on the inside of the building, you don't want to be too loud because art pieces are hung there, as you can see. So we just used the pattern in just very subtle tone on tones in the upper part of the lobby areas. And then for wayfinding, or here for the donor installation, we just use a little bit of that stripe, have a little bit fun with that color pattern. And of course, the logo became the color pattern either in the letters itself or as a backdrop. The colors, by the way, were a little bit inspired by the group of 7 colors. So we wanted a Canadian component. The colors that are all a little bit muted. They are not too vibrant. They are a little bit grayed down, so to say, in reference to the Canadian group of 7. Daniel Spectrum is another project by Artscape. Artscape was a very good client of us. And Daniel Spectrum sits in Regent Park. Regent Park was in the 60s a development based on Le Corbusier's The Radiant City, the idea of these high rises isolated on a green patch of land. And and this was a huge development and deemed the best development in Toronto, in Canada. But very soon it turned out that it wasn't really working. And also the money to maintain the grasslands, the neighborhoods, and the infrastructure wasn't there. So it became a problem. And until the redevelopment started. And so one of the largest redevelopments, most of these high rises are already gone and are replaced with other buildings. And the cultural hubs, the Daniel Spectrum, sits smack in the middle of that redevelopment, which is still ongoing. There's still a couple of buildings to be changed. And so the Tim Jones from Artscape, he demanded that we show that this is a multicultural environment. And he demanded that I show the flags of all the nations who live in this area are represented in that cultural hub or on that cultural hub. And I thought for myself, my goodness, that looks like the United Nations. I cannot do that. We have to find another solution. And we came up with the following idea. We said, why don't we abstract these flags and choose 11 vertical stripes, 11 because you have a center line, you can make 3 parts easily or more. And so you can work with the patterns that colors, that flags often have. And even so you might not read that it is a certain flag anymore, but it has still this kind of regality and this kind of vibrancy to it. And so we did that. We synthesized all these colors and to vertical stripes. And then we added these stripes together to these long bands. And because the building itself is white, we exchanged white with gray and placed them in an interesting pattern on the building itself. And even the digital screen on the lower right canopy defaults between the messages into that pattern as well. So it integrates. And these patterns are not only in the front, they wrap around the underside as well. So it creates this interesting pattern, because otherwise it would be just a white facade. And in addition to that, we added these fins that are blue on one side and yellow on the other side. So when you drive in one direction, you see the yellow fins. If you drive the other direction, you see the blue fins. Again, adding a little bit of interest and question marks. What is that building? What is it all about? And on the backside, where the performance hall is, we use then these stripes in a more rhythmic arrangement, because it's about music, it's about performances. So, and again, to break up that white box. And something similar happened with the tower behind, which was also not part of the project, but they just stole these colors and used them on their building, which is, you know, I see that always as a compliment if that happens. And interesting enough, just recently, I discovered this building. It is by Ivansko Architects in Calgary. It's for a school, and they used the same thing. It's independent. Nobody knew about the other work. And they used a similar idea. But again, what is interesting here is they don't have it on a white backdrop. They have it on these gray panels. And what the gray panels do, they hold these colors together. They are not as vibrant anymore. They are embedded in that gray field and cannot move anymore. The colors on white are more vibrant, even though they aren't necessarily more vibrant. Some are, but on the white they have the tendency to vibrate more than when they are embedded in a background tone, similar to the image I showed before with the ugly Pantone color. When it's embedded, the pattern is embedded in that backdrop color, it is hold together. It's a nice trick that we often use when we use colors. And back to the spectrum, so these bands from the outside wrap on the ground floor right into the inside of the building, and entrances to performance spaces are then elongated stripes with the name on it. And on the second floor, it's just the stripes itself. So it's just color that we use basically to emphasize, again here, cultural hub for a variety of people. At the beginning, even so it was colorful, but the local residents still were hesitant to go, and they thought, oh, it's this modern building that's not for us. But through programming, through active intervention, with the community, we brought them in, and that was, once they were in, it was perfect, and it's very successful ever since. And the color stripes, because we don't have a logo for this cultural hub, the color stripes basically become the identity, as you see on the website, and the picket fence use the colors as well. Totally different, an example for the Bank of Montreal in Toronto. The bank has a new flagship office tower at the former Eaton Center, or that part of the Eaton Center that was the Sears store. So it's 4 floors, which are a huge footprint. So it was a challenge for us from a wayfinding standpoint. How do you navigate people through this area? So we divided that footprint into basically the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, and gave each a color. And then everything in that sector is colored in that specific way. And not only did we do the wayfinding and also the experiential graphics, but they also asked us to do a color study for future office buildings and floors, and how they can color the walls in a certain way so that they don't have to start from scratch again, but they can use this recommendation that we came up with and apply it to new office buildings. And that was a huge task and quite challenging because of that huge footprint. But what we did, we broke it up. So it's always, if a task becomes too big, you break it up in smaller pieces. And so we started, the first part was color research. So we read everything about effects of color in the environment, in spaces, and what it does. And the second part was then building that color framework based on the BMO color palette, because after all, it's the blue bank. So blue has a dominance in it. And then we showed them how the color could be applied in the office environment. And you know, I don't want to go through that, but there's a lot of what we learned also from the employees. We had workshops, several workshops, where we showed them colors and asked them, what do you feel when you see this color, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of work that went into it. And what you see here is just the end result. The proposed color palette for BMO interiors, you know, based as the corporate colors, the blue and the red on top. And then we developed variations of blue tones and also gray tones that go along with it. Then accent colors, but which are also in muted light tones. And then accent colors that are very colorful, but geared to the 4 different directions, as I showed in the map before. So this is just the final, the in between. It is a lot of experimentation and nuances with colors till we arrive to this stage. And then we divided it also in customer-facing colors. So if customers come into a branch, it should more demonstrate the blue tones. That's why the accent colors are more reduced. And non-customer facing, also where the employees sit, can have more variety. We don't want to be so stubborn. What often happens in the corporate environment, they have a color, then everything is painted in this color, and it's deadly. And so we still brought variety to the space. People are different. People are not all the same. So you need variety. And then we laid out just in this is another office tower, laid out all the areas of color. And important also, white. White is still part of wall colors. We don't want to color everything. But everything was laid out accordingly. And then also specific colors for specific rooms, like phone booths have different colors than focus pods or enclave cubbies, as they call it. The cafeteria is something special, in the wellness areas, and so on and so on. And for all, we developed the color hierarchy. And then finally, we showed it in renderings how it can look like. So these are photos taken and recolored to show the effect and how graphics work together with the furniture and with the upholstery, so that all comes together. And you know, then doing color swatches and checking on the colors, do they really work as we planned it, and so on. So following the whole project through from the beginning to the end. And the team is still working. We have 2 floors done, and 2 other floors are still in production. And BMO won recently the Remy, which is the real estate award, the best prize for their category. So everybody is very happy, which is always good. But for us, it was very satisfying that we could, as graphic designers, have such an impact on the look and feel of that office environment. And here just a couple of images that show the results. And also interesting is, or really positive is, and that goes back to my idea that nowadays architects and interior designers, they understand, and graphic designers understand, we have to work together. It's not that the architects are on top, and no, it's really working together. And in this case is graphic designers like wayfinding and environmental graphics, plus the interior designers, which brings in the furniture and the build out, and the colors they choose all works together. Even the pattern in the floor, which is part of the interior designers, is actually then designed by us because it has to work with the other elements as well. Or combining photo with overlays in color, and how the upholstery again all seems to work together and creates a unified look, but still a very variety in the look and feel. And also interesting, we worked with Rena Greer. Rena Greer is an art consultant, and she brought in Panya Clark Escobal, a wonderful artist, and she created these trompe d'oeil, I think it's called true ring. And under certain viewpoints, these rings really become a ring. These are anthropomorphic images. But as soon as you walk on, they fall apart again. And then she used the colors that we specified in our color theme, and so that it all comes together. And you see it, how it is in the space. And these escalators are a relic from these department stores. So the architects left them in. It would be too expensive to change it. But with that art piece, they become actually the focal point of the space. And it also is a landmark for wayfinding. So it really, everything worked together. And it's a very colorful environment. In order to that the employees use the staircases, we also used art. Here's the three colorful ones are by Jimmy Limit, artist, and the top right one is also by Panya, where she also used these anamorphic images, but in a more linear way with these folded airplanes. And so rich in color, it helps to, again, you know where you are when you are in the purple staircase or in the red staircase or the blue one, and but also have a little bit fun and bring a little bit poesy and poetic way of seeing the world. The last one, do I still have time or am I over time already? I think I'm over time. So
well, you can go, you can finish. It's
I
so
can
interesting.
finish.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the last one. So Red Crow Community College in Standoff, Alberta. This is a Blackfoot community, the Kanai exactly, and they have their own community college. And you know, with the residential schools and all the history we have in Canada, it is very important for the Blackfoot community to find their identity and honor their identity and culture, and even the language is almost lost. And so this school is specific for them. We were hired to do the wayfinding system, which we not just imposed on them. We had discussions with the elders and we showed them designs, and they picked the solutions that they liked the most. And so there's the wayfinding elements that use graphic stylistic elements from their culture. But one of the most important parts was actually the art consultancy that we had. So here you see more wayfinding. These pictograms are, yes, they are designed by us, but they are actually taken from the vocabulary that the Kainai people use. And also the colors are referencing the colors that they use. And then also their language is first and English is second. But the thrilling part is the artwork, and we helped curate these art pieces that are all by Kainai artists. And how do you tell better the story of your culture and your people as through art? And that is the way they went here with the school. And the building is full with art pieces that are completely different. Each one is a different style and technique and has a different story to tell, but you are surrounded by it. And when you come to the school, you immediately know this is a Kainai, a Blackfoot community college, and as with all the varieties. And on the outside, we had this headdress. You know, the Kainai have this specific headdress, which is not like you see in Apache movies, on cowboy movies. No, their headdress is going upward. So this is a symbolized headdress with the values written on the inside, the values that community honors and stands for. And that's the piece where they come together and celebrate events. And that is the opening reception when the school opened. Oki, which we have here on the gym wall, means welcome in the language. And for us, it was a really welcoming and eye-opening project as well. And a little fun thing at the end, you know, what I learned in my career is don't take yourself too seriously. It is very healthy and good that you can laugh about yourself as well. Even so, we are very passionate about what we do, but you also should take some distance and be able to have humor in what you do. Also, I must say the acting here is sublime. And that's the end of my color talk.
Thank you so much, Udo. That was fabulous and mind-blowing. Really, really enjoyed that. Let's everybody clap. Should we, do you want to stop share screen and we can, I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and comments. Yes, we have recorded it and we will post it on our website. Does anyone have any questions for Udo? Lots of accolades in the, do you want to just put your hand up and you can.
I just want to say thank you so much, Udo. It was fascinating.
Thank you, Montaha. I think your game was a perfect introduction to that talk.
Absolutely. I find it quite interesting that you are using all these different nuances of color. I think that's really important. Like a lot of people, I think, still gravitate to the vivid, vibrant colors. And, you know, you referred to muted colors so many times and all these very subtle variations, I think. Do you think that helps, you know, enhance the experience or reflect the community more? What's your comment on, you know, the degree of nuance that you put into your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, we're working on a birthing center. And birthing centers, as you know, are often just, if they are not built purposefully, are just a floor in a hospital and look like a hospital environment. And in the birthing process, it's so important that everything aligns perfectly to help with the birthing process, because you can have endorphins, or you can have the opposite that almost stops the birth. And so we work together with Hariri Pontarini architects and Noah architects on the new birthing center, which is also just a floor in a clinic, and bring in imagery and very nuanced, fine tones of nature-inspired imagery that just help you to feel relaxed, to feel welcoming, to feel at ease. And the architects do their part as well. And it's so important, these fine nuances, to bring into an environment like a birthing center. But even in a project like BMO, where it's all about financial things, but that's just on the surface. The reality is it's about the human experience in everything. And there are people working there. And we are not coming in, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we are not coming in like Faber Birren did it, to maximize certain effects. No, we come in to bring a poetic view, to distract even, to question something. And this is often done in a subtle way, with colors that are maybe not as used as the typical colors you see. It's also slowing down the people to make them aware of who they are and what's maybe important in life. So it sounds grandiose, but color is a perfect way, because color is emotional. It triggers other ways than words. And so I'm convinced that through color and the care we give to projects, that we can really help to improve the environment, especially where everything is so technological driven. That's the key, and color is perfect in such an environment.
Great, thank you. Laura, do you have a question?
Yes. So I'm interested or curious about the creative process. And when you're starting to think about a project, do you use the computer a lot, or do you work mostly by hand, or is it a mix of both?
Yeah, it's when I started my career in the 80s, early 80s, there was no technical. My technical object was a ruler pen, and we didn't even had a copier at the time. So really everything was done by hand. There were no Pantone colors that you could draw out, bring out from the drawer. If you needed a color, you painted the color, you mixed the color, then you painted a sheet of paper, let it dry, press it, and then you cut out the logo. So I come from that world. Everything was done by hand. It was like a trade. And I still admire these times. It was the best times, because it was like zen, you and your place and the ruler pen, wonderful. But over time you got adjusted to the computer. I still work the traditional. I start sketching. The hand brain combination is but way faster than the computer. And I can change things quickly, and I feel comfortable, and I can read my drawings, and so on and so on. With the younger generation, it's different. They haven't learned that really. They go straight to the computer, and often forget that doing things by hand and figuring things out and flipping a paper and doing things with it can create new experiences. So my role is also to bring them out once in a while and show them what is if we do a little sample this way or that way. And but everything is now in the computer, and but I feel that the computer sometimes dictates more the outcome than if you start completely free. Also, there's so much references now available on the fingertip. But once you pick something that was already done, especially if it was done as a designed object, it limits or it fixates your thinking. Then you have this in front of you and you can't get rid of it anymore, and you just change it up. I like inspiration that comes from art that is not directly related, but I like the thoughts about compositions, about color combinations, and so on. It still leaves your mind open and free to explore what you need. Then if you go to Pinterest or other sites and just pick an already made sign and just change it, because you are then like that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think the spaces you create are an antidote to the digital world that we're so fixated on. And do you find that, the colors make people engage with the spaces more, or do they take away different experiences?
I think color is an attraction, first of all. So it brings people in. It takes the anxiety away. Shall I really go in there or not? Because it speaks to you in a different way. And especially with, that's why we use it for community centers, for cultural buildings. It brings this closeness. We're currently working on a art gallery in Queen's University, where the curator is a very colorful person and very revolutionary in some ways. And she's completely open-minded to color. And I find this very encouraging, especially for an art institution where you often just have minimal, just a line of type, very, very minimalistic, very clean. But here we can say something about the community and bring the community more in, and color and materiality. Maybe the color is not a paint color, maybe it's through materiality. We can probably show a different way of how an art gallery can function.
Great. Thank you so much. Sounds very exciting. Does anyone have any other questions, comments? Lots of great comments in the chat, Udo. Just take a minute and read them. Really great points that people have raised. Montaha?
Yeah, just one last thing, because and I omitted to ask you that earlier. What the title is, like a question mark out of the blue, or is it out of the blue? But why blue? Like, I saw the influence of blue in your work, and I personally know what that means, but I would like to hear it from you.
The title came out of the blue. Is like, do you have this idea just out of the blue? Do you lay down on the couch and wait till the muse kisses you and the idea is there? So that was the question mark I wanted to associate with that. So of course it is hard work. There's the idea maybe that comes first, but then there is a lot of process to get to the point that this idea really is ripe to be presented. But this initial spark comes from deep, and it doesn't have to come from me. It can come from anybody in the office, can be the secretary. Everybody has good ideas, but then often is how do you channel this idea and bring it to fruition? And so there's a result which looks like out of the blue, it's suddenly there, but it's actually a process that often starts many years beforehand. Many of solutions like the heart and the pattern you saw with Casey House that I showed, this is an old thing that I had 10 years ago already done, but suddenly it fits so perfectly. There may be a slight change to it with a heart in it, but now it becomes, and so these ideas are in your backpack, so to say. You have them, you have evolved them, you have experimented with them, but didn't know what to do with it. And then suddenly, because of this rich foundation, suddenly they work, or it clicks and they come to fruition. But then there's still the process, and you need a team of excellent communicators and people who work with you from external sides, like the architects, and internal, the team in the office that all believes in that and works on that and creates that unique example.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jackie, last question.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Udo. Thank you so much. That was an amazing, amazing presentation. I'm a mural artist and I'm so obsessed with color that I work in public art. And I'm very excited because you started talking about the BMO building, and I have work that's going to be exhibited there. So I'm very excited for it. Actually, I just wanted to ask you a question. If your mental health, if your mind were a color, what color would that be and why? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I can commit to one color because there's so many colors that are beautiful. I actually believe there is not an ugly color at all. It really depends on the combination. And so I cannot commit to it. And there's something about every color. However, I must say, I like orange. I like orange in all kinds of facets. So maybe there is something I would say, if a color, then it's orange.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. Great question for everyone to think about. All right. Well, thank you once again, Udo. Let's give him virtual applause.
Well, thank you, Robin.
Terrific and inspiring talk, and very, very happy that you could join us today for International Colour Day. I think it's the perfect fit for really engaging people in with color and opening up their lives with all the beautiful spaces that you create. So thank you once again, and thank you everyone for joining us. Very happy to have you on International Colour Day, and just stay tuned to our website for more colorful talks. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Andy,
Thank you.
for joining.
Thank you.